across the country. I've been pretty fortunate in the sense that they have the opportunity to be able to use some of the federal funds prior to really using local and state funds. And the rationale for that is really there's a shelf life on how and when you need to use those funds. All of the ARP funds or the ESSA funds, there are typically several of them, and they typically end in 2023, and ESSA 3 ends in 2024. So with that being said, when I came to Colonial Beach Public Schools, I've had the opportunity to really spend some time through my 100-day plan conversation with a lot of stakeholders. And a couple of things that came to light, and our budget is going to reflect some of those things. A big part of it centralized on professional learning, and that is that how do we train and how do we retain teachers? That is a major issue in our school division, retention of teachers. Most of the time, people say it's because we don't pay them well enough. I did an analysis within 5 schools to include Essex, Westmoreland, King George, Richmond County, and us. When we look at their funding, look at how teachers are paid, and we are pretty much right in line, if not better, than most except for King George. And so my focus is going to be really to present a budget that's going to focus on teacher retention, professional learning, and a little bit of a reorganization, which I've talked a little bit about since coming to the division. One of the things that we can do a better job with as a school division is our professional learning for teachers and making sure that they know exactly what supports they have when kids are struggling, what is good behavior, what is instruction. We want to make sure that they have support. And part of my reorg plan that I presented to the board last month, which was approved by the board, is going to focus on a couple of positions that's going to allow us to be able to have some individuals in the school division that's going to focus on it. Because right now, a lot of it is contracted out. And we want to make sure that we keep that in-house. With that being said, I created a budget based on the projected ADM, which is our daily membership from the state. Most superintendents, there's 3 schools of thought. One, sometimes they create a budget that is a little bit below the ADM. Sometimes they create a budget that is above the ADM. My philosophy is we do it based on what the state projects. When I created this budget, our ADM was about 570, 340 at the elementary, 222 at the high school, which accounts for about 39% at the high school and about 61% at the elementary school. In the state of Virginia, there is something called the Local Composite Index that the school divisions across the state, they use on the governor's level in order to fund schools. It basically look at a ratio, they look at a percentage, and they tell you what it's going to cost to educate children within a respective division. I want you to keep in mind that this number right here, the 0.3368, is for Colonial Beach. It's public knowledge. You Google it on the website. DOE, you can pull it for any division in the state of Virginia. And this LCI index, it changes over time. I think last year it was about 3.2 and change. So it went up a little bit, and you will see those implications in a little while. So for this year, our projected enrollment from the state of Virginia is 576. So I built a budget based on that. So our overall operation is about $9,940,955, with a state allocation about $7,317,541. And there is a local match that is required from the state level, and that local match for this year is 2,623,414, and that number is higher, and I'll show you why in a little bit, than what was expected from the local match last year. And I'll give you a historical context in a few. So essentially, that gives us approximately 578,270, a little bit higher than the previous fiscal year, from what the budget is asking us to do from the state level. I want to say that the budget, typically, there are different phases to this budget from the state. It starts out sometime with a House bill, then it goes to a Senate bill, then you typically have the governor's budget, then there are amendments that are put in. So what I'm presenting here could change 2, 3, 4 weeks from now. So with that being said, there's approximately about 7 million allocated to employees' pay and benefits, which equates to, for our purposes, a 6% increase from the previous year. One of the things that we've done is to make sure that we address the issue of equity and to make sure that all employees are receiving the same exact allocation across the board. So when the money is given, what do we do with it? The local government share is 26.4, the state 73, and here are some big buckets. The first big one I'm going to talk about is operations. That is just the cost of running the school division on a daily basis. It can range from the idea of paying the electric bill to as far as repairs across the school. There is a big bucket for division tuition. And I wanted to put that in there to share because we pay, and I want to share this good news, because we have 3 students who just qualified for governor's school full-time. We just got the word yesterday. And we also pay for kids to go to governor's school. So I have to pay tuition for the kids to go down to governor's school. We also have kids who go to the Northern Neck Tech Center, as well as the Alternative Ed Center. And we pay tuition for those slots. Those slots are typically divided across the Northern Neck. So it could be 4 or 5 schools within the Northern Neck sending kids to the Tech Center down in Richmond County. The other big piece here I want to talk about is technology. And of course, when you look at the graph or the chart up here, you'll see that at the elementary school, there's about a 3.3% in the budget, whereas the high school is 7.7%. And I bring that up because the question that comes up is, well, why is the high school funded higher than the elementary school? And it's simply because of sports. So when you factor the salary of coaches, which is typically a stipend that we pay, where the elementary don't have that, that's the reason why the cost is a little bit higher. So I went back and I added this graph and this chart since our last meeting with town council members. And I wanted to give a historical context over the last 5 years in terms of the budget. So in 2018, the budget was prepared on a ADM of 585, and the local share was 2,299,916, and it stayed there for 2 consecutive years. The ADM was 610. In 2020, notice that there's a big dip, and of course, that's the trade COVID in 2020-21. In 2021-2022, which is our current fiscal year, the budget was prepared with an ADM of 595. And in bold, at the bottom, I italicized it. The previous superintendent asked the town council for 2,298,397, which is a little bit higher than the local share of 2,055,730. For this current budget, we are preparing it on 576. And the state share is 2,623,414. But notice, in italicized, I'm asking for 2,748,414. And the difference between that number is $125,000. And the reason why I'm asking for the 125 is because it's going to support our reorganization plan, which I'll talk a little bit about in a little bit. And to the right, in yellow, the bar graph is just an extension of the same numbers, just to kind of give you a different view. But it's just still the same story. So then I added this graph a little bit since we last met. And I added this graph to talk about what's the final ADM at the end of the school year. So the budget was built here in 2018 at 585. Final ADM in 2018 was 598. 610 in 2019, final ADM 628. And I'll just skip a little bit, I'll go down to 2021. It was built on 595. Final ADM was 595. The ADM is normally taken in 2 pages. We have, when I was a principal, we had this magic date all principals go by. It was called September 30th. And that is when you get told as principal, you need to make sure all of your children are coded properly, because that's when the state pulls numbers the first time. The state pulled numbers again in March, which is pregnant. Just did. So for this year, we built this budget on 576. So I also went ahead and added, just to kind of give you a historical context. I know we have folks in the audience who probably haven't seen this before, but I gave you a historical context in terms of end of year expenditures. That is a conversation that we've had throughout the course of the last couple of weeks with many of the town council members, but I wanted to share it with you. So the question then becomes, you receive the funds, do you spend it? So in 2018, final expenditures that were reported to the state, 7,767,380. And I'm going to skip down. I'm going to go to 2020, 2021, 8,308,542. And I put a star on 2021, 2022, because we're still in the fiscal year. So I still have payroll to run expenditures for the next 3 months until school starts. Okay. So here's where it becomes interesting. So why is it all of a sudden we go back here and we look at an ADM of 595, and now we're at 576, and the budget is high? As you could tell, why that doesn't make any sense, but it does. And the reason why it makes sense is because the state of Virginia says we're going to increase the local government share in some categories. Some of them is new, because the state previously did not charge the local government with some of those expenditures. So right now, if you look at fiscal year 2022 versus 23, which is what's expected, notice the difference in the yellow for basic aid, special education, vocational education, VRS, at risk, they're all higher. So I'll give you a different view. This table shows you that last year, in basic aid alone, the state provided us $998, $983, but notice how much they're asking for this current year. Or giving $1,194,900. There's a difference of almost $200,000 in terms of the local government share. Vocational education, there's a difference of $38,819. Special education, $51,000. Difference from the previous year. VRS, about $30,000, $31,000. At risk, it's a big one. A difference of $117,130. And here's the new one. Last year, the local government didn't have to fund or provide any funds for what the state called re-benchmarking hold harmless And here's what that means. It means that over the last couple of years, the state provided different funding and positions and opportunities to be able to address the issue of COVID. So what they say is we're still in a pandemic, we're getting out of it, hopefully. And what they say is that we're not going to punish you, we're going to still fund you for part of that, but I guarantee you next year it's probably not going to be in the budget. If we continue to stay where we are and we're not in a pandemic. But they say that this year, we're going to ask the local government to contribute to it to the tune of almost $58,000. So when you add all those numbers, they equate to about 468,000, not the 5, almost 6. But there are a lot of small areas that I didn't put, because if I put, I would have probably 2 or 3 extra charts to show. But I did the big bucket so you could see as to where there's a difference in terms of what is being asked from the local government. So the question then becomes, what does that mean on a school level? Besides it, the second bullet, there's a 10% hike in health insurance costs. So instead of us telling the teachers that you have to pick up the cost, so if I give you a 6% raise and I charge you 5% health insurance increase, well, that's really 1%. So really, you're not really helping that teacher who can't afford to even live in town. And don't forget, the inflation rate in the country is about 8%. So if we go at 8% inflation rate, 6% cost, I charge you 5, I split it with 10, we're at 1, how do we make the difference? So we have to continue to address the issue of inflation and the issue of rising cost of health insurance. The two big things, bullet number 2 and 3, is when I came to the school division, there's a superintendent, and at the bottom of the superintendent in the org chart, I have several directors, but I have no one that deals with the issue of accountability on the state testing and or professional learning in-house or instruction. So I have my elementary principal and our high school principal sitting on state meetings in addition to running the school. That should not be their responsibility. That should be the school board's office responsibility. So I proposed to the board the idea of reorganizing, and I asked the board to fund one position for the current budget right now, and we asked the town council to fund for a second position. That is where the 125 came in, which went up a little bit higher to the ADM. At the high school level, one thing I've learned in my short time here, course selection for kids. You got to try to give kids more course selection. We offer art, music. We offer art. We offer PE. We don't offer music for children. We should. There are some other classes that children should have access to. So what we do is we put them in engineering. Now keep in mind, we're a small school division. We're a small high school. So we're not going to be able to compete with big high schools and have a major course selection. But I gave 2 positions to the high school principal. We added division psychologists. Right now, we're coming from a pandemic. Our kids are in crisis. Social and emotional learning is key. We don't have anyone in the house to address those issues. A school counselor is not trained to do that. So how do we address that issue? And then, one of the things that I did when I came here is I pulled every single contract for every employee in the school division. And I did a salary analysis, and I made sure that everyone was a salary scale. They were on a scale. And there are some salaries that we had to adjust, either up or down, to make sure that they were on a scale. So we did that. Not a lot of money, but small chunks. And the last thing is, we have to invest in getting people to want to come to Toledo Beach. We lose a lot of teachers because sometimes you just can't afford this money to go ahead and move in. Or they turned it down and said, do your offering. So this year we have to be creative as superintendents. I'm not the only one. So we're offering recruiting stipends and moving stipends for hopefully attract some teachers to the school division. I will tell you, over the last couple of weeks, we're making good strides filling all the vacancies at our elementary school. High school is going to be a different challenge. So, with that being said, if the town council, which I've talked about, we asked them to fund one. If the town council funds one position, here's what our organizational chart will look like. So at the top is the superintendent and all the yellows, and the supervision of all the departments. One person will take care of that one half. If the school board, which they've already done, approve one position, then this is what we look like. Pretty balanced. We focus on professional learning, instruction, accountability, and operations on the new org chart. So the budget process, we're here tonight on April 6th to present to the town council. And looking ahead, it's about recruiting and retention and making changes based on the Senate, the General Assembly, or the governor's budget when it's finalized, or any amendments to the budget. And VDOE typically always come out every week. We get tons of memos from Ms. Barlow. And sometime in the memos, it talks about changes in education. So for example, a few years ago, they increased, I think it was 2 years ago, they increased the ratio from counselors to students. So more school divisions, well, not more, all school divisions had to hire more counselors. And part of that is again dealing with social and emotional learning, especially during the COVID period. So really, that's what I got in a nutshell. It was our school budget. I'll stay right here and take any questions. I'm going to take this thing off the screen.
Are there any questions? Yeah, Dr. Pierre?
Dr. Mitchell,
Yes, ma'am.
I think during our one-on-one or two-on-one discussions, I asked the question about some of these new positions, how were they being, those obligations being met before? And I think you said you were contracting them out.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that there is kind of some sort of an offset in the cost of the position versus contract. Can you go through that?
Yes.
Those positions?
Sure. For example, one of the positions, the executive director of instruction and professional learning, is one of the positions that the school board have allow us. Let me rephrase. The executive director position for instruction and professional learning is what I'm asking the town to fund. The operations and the accountability is what the school board has given me the opportunity to go and fill. Right now, we were contracting a couple of companies from the previous superintendent. One of them is called University LLC, I believe it's called. And what they do is they come in and they do professional development for teachers. They do one-on-one coaching. They also do small group coaching by sitting in collaborative learning team meetings in terms of helping teachers look at data, plan instruction. They also observe the teachers teach and give them feedback along with the principal. What I'm looking to do is do it in-house. Have someone that can be able to be there, not a day a week or 2 days a week, but they're here 5 days a week when teachers need them. And so that really is the rationale, is really taking the idea from contracting things out and hiring staff to do it in-house, which is what most school divisions do. I do know small divisions tend to contract some of that work, particularly around when we start looking at school psychologists and looking at speech pathologists. It's just very difficult to fund that in a small school division. But I'm looking to reallocate some of those funds to be able to go ahead and fill those positions in-house.
Thank you. Any other question?
Could you tell us what the differences in cost between having an in-house person and
So it varies because we have two contracts for the university LLCs that was signed by the previous superintendent before, in the tune of about almost $81,000. It's very expensive, right? And in addition to that, it's a situation where you were not you were trying to spread the time over the course of the year, but they may not be able to reach as many teachers who need the support. So most of the teachers that we tend to attract are teachers who are fresh out of college. They don't really know how to teach yet. They may have the book skills, but the practical skills, they need someone to walk them through those processes. So you paying someone outside to do it, we try to keep it in-house. Another example is for right now, when it comes to, I put it in the budget, a school psychologist. Right now, I pay $90 an hour if I need to have a school psychologist to go ahead and do testing for a student going for a special education evaluation. It costs. So essentially, the idea is not to keep contracting things out, but what can we grow in-house? That's just two examples.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No, I can appreciate all the time that you have spent with council over the last week or so, 2 weeks, and I can tell nobody fell asleep in any of the classes that you taught.
It's a Caribbean thing, sorry.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you all and for all the conversation, and it was really nice to get to meet everyone in person. So thank you for listening, and those of you in the audience, hopefully this has made some better sense for you about what we do in our schools.
Thank you. Tax rate analysis report. No, I missed quarterly strategic action plan. Wasn't trying to skip you, Ms. Adams Jacob. We were on time, I will say, until the school presentation. We were going.
I will catch us.
Really?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll catch us back up. So in your packet, you have an update on our strategic action plan items for the year. Just for the sake of the public and the audience, town council had a retreat in January, and we formally adopted our strategic action plan in March. We currently have 65 items on the plan this year, a little bit down from the 88 that we had last year. So there were a number of ongoing or immediate strategic action items, and I know this is really small on the screen, so I know if you want to zoom in a little bit. Sorry. Starting with the first one, authorize repairs to the town pier and appropriate $100,000 in funding. We just mentioned where the town pier item was. That is ongoing, but will be done here in the next month or so. Number 3, Heather has been working very hard to publicize Code Red and promote to our citizens for signing up. There has been a poster that was created and placed on the town's Facebook page, as well as the welcome board in town. Item number 4, review and update council's rules and procedures. That was completed and adopted on January 19th. Item number 7, continue to explore joint marketing efforts with northern neck localities, including the town of Montrose. That is complete. I have showed you the joint marketing billboard with the town of Montrose and Warsaw that will be launching in Richmond in the Scotts Addition area. That will run from May through September, and we were able to leverage the rest of a grant that Ms. Susan had worked on prior to my arrival, but we were able to spend the rest of that down for this billboard in Richmond. Item number 12, we've been continuing to support and assist as appropriate the Colonial Beach Rescue Squad relocation and consider the future use of 700 Colonial. Mr. Murphy and I have been meeting with them as well as the mayor and Mr. Moncure over the last 6 months. So they're now at a place where they will be moving forward and proceeding with that project. I'll move on to within the 3 months. Number 14, adopt financial management policies, working with Davenport ahead of the budget process. We completed that, and town council adopted those financial policies on February 16th. Those policies will be included in our new budget document that really gives us the foundation for our fiscal sustainability moving forward. Number 15, research and brief counsel on the establishment of an open container for alcohol consumption, which is known as a designated outdoor refreshment area, or DORA. I worked with Mr. J.C. Levy, and we briefed counsel on that item, and we are moving forward as we finish, thanks to Chief Deaver, our public safety plan with submitting that application to Virginia ABC. Number 16, brief counsel on the costs and benefits of participation in the Virginia Main Street program. We completed that in February as well, and have been working along with Downtown Colonial Beach on some of their efforts as it relates to moving towards full Main Street status. Number 18, just to highlight, closing on phase 2 of document development. We have closed on that, and that has been completed. The reassessment analysis and tax rate setting. We are currently working on that, and that is ongoing, but we are currently on target with that. Implementing business license tax improvements, thanks to the finance department working with Ms. Oakes and Mr. Schaefer on the revised ordinance adopted by council on February 16th. And that new business license application will be an online form that our residents will be able to fill out online, so you don't have to come in and just get paper anymore. You'll be able to fully fill out that process on our new website once that launches. Complete an update of the town new website. We are working on the last phase of our transition to our .gov, and that will be going live here in April. 28, adopt the capital improvement plan for the FY23 and subsequent years. I've worked with Mr. Nathan Howe through the Planning Commission, and they actually adopted the CIP on the March 31st meeting. So thanks to the Planning Commission for all of their work over the last several months, as well as Mr. R.T. Taylor from Davenport. And I won't dive too much into the next 6 months or the rest of the year, other than Heather, as well as Ms. Shea Giles, finalized FOIA training for all of our staff, which was number 33. And we are working on a number of other projects within the year that we've had to start. But for the sake of time, I'll leave the rest of the items for another future update next quarter.
It is a lot. But, you know, we got through half of them last year, so. I know you're sick tonight. I'm not gonna give you a hard time. No,
Considering how many you put in here.
it was a lot. I just want to make it clear, I didn't put any of them in there. Those were, the whole list came from things that had been brought up in council meetings, and then we never knew what happened to them. And the list got compiled by going through the minutes and the meetings for the prior year and saying, okay, this was a concern, and this was a concern, and this was a concern. And I got tired of not knowing where it went. So it's like, we're gonna put it on a list, and if we don't want to do it, council can say, we don't need to do it. That can happen, that's fine. But they shouldn't just go into the abyss somewhere. So now they're trapped. And that's just the most comprehensive and concise information I have seen the town present in my time. Whether it's commission, planning commission, or council time. So, thank you. You guys are working hard.
I like to thank our staff for always working hard and doing as much as you can. I know there's a lot, and we're all working as hard as we can. So we thank you for your efforts. And thank town council for the support and the direction with the adoption of the strategic plan. It really gives us some focus, as well as a way to actually implement what you all want, as well as the community. So thank you.
Yeah, holds everybody to task. Great. Okay, any other comments on the quarterly plan update? Okay. All right, now, the fun part, tax rate analysis report.
What everybody's been waiting for.
Oh, no, they're not waiting for this. They're waiting, I know, it's a couple more bullet points down, it's okay.
Okay, so we are presenting an analysis of the new tax assessment as regards to our real estate. So we're going to try to give as much information to you so you can determine the tax rate for 2023. And we are going to request to hold a public hearing on this matter on May 18th. The next slide shows the background of why we're here doing this. It's per the Code of Virginia. We have to do it like an equalization. If not, we have to, if you look at item B, if council feels that there's a need for additional revenue over the 1%, 101% they're allowing, then we have to hold a public hearing, and this is what we are requesting. So our issue here, our current tax rate is 80%.
80
With-
cents per hundred.
Yes, 80 cents per hundred, correct. The real estate assessment for 2023 is going to result in more than 1% total real property tax levied. And per the Code of Virginia, if the assessment results in an increase of 1% or more, then the locality has to reduce its rate to produce no more than 101% of the previous tax year levy, unless the increase is deemed necessary by the governing body. Now we're going to show you the levy analysis. And I want to point out that when we prepared this presentation, we had a different assessment number here. We have a new assessment number, and I'm not sure if Heather can share that. We were actually meeting up until today with the county on assessment numbers, and we had based this analysis that you see on the screen at the assessment of $647,457,300. That now is, I believe, 608.
608,543,800.
Okay, so that's going to change our equalization rate. So now our equalization rate, at the time we prepared this, it was 67 cents, and now it is 71 cents. And we will share that updated information. We'll replace it in this presentation on the website, and we'll share that with you once we have that. So now, come to the next slide. Are you trying to update it now?
The whole slide's wrong though, so.
Yes, and we have a new one. We'll have to share it with you. We didn't have it in time to get it into the presentation today. So on the decision, items to consider. Okay, the strategic action plan, our capital improvement costs, grant matching funding, the 2023 budget, and the school required local match. As you heard today, that's increased $476,000 from last year. Our additional staffing needs, cost of living, and the increased cost of supplies and services that we're facing. And so we have alternatives. We can choose the equalization rate, or we can elect to set the 2023 real estate rate to reflect our town's revenue needs. So the impact, equalization will reduce additional revenue. This will create a structural budget deficit based on the increases to the school's required ADM, general government increases related to inflation, healthcare, and our current staffing levels. Planned projects would require issuing debt or be delayed to future years, and we have no funds for grant matching. Adopting an alternate rate will bring in additional revenue for 2023, so we can move forward on our planned project without issuing any debt, and we'll have the opportunity to apply for grants that have matching funds. And tonight, our recommendation, we're going to recommend to town council to adopt an alternative real estate tax rate for 2023, no lower than 77 cents per 100. Now, this will provide the town with additional revenue we need to fulfill the project in our strategic action plan without taking on any additional debt. Does anybody have any questions?
Are you going to speak for that?
Yeah.
I think it was well said, well laid out. Obviously, your current rate is 80 cents. If you were to choose to go budget neutral, you'd actually be in a deficit mode for your upcoming budget at 71 cents. I think it makes sense based on the analysis we've performed for y'all over the past several months, and in discussions with staff you've got about $10 million in projects on the tax supported side. You got $13.5 million identified on the utility fund side. You've got some combination of grants and reserves. There may be an element of debt as things evolve, but you're going to need some type of revenue source to offset all those needs, in addition to the increase where the state's telling you from the Virginia Department of Education, your required local minimum match to the schools has gone up about $500,000. So I think all of those things melded together, I don't think revenue neutral necessarily gets you where you need to be. So I think with some element of identifying some element of resources, and I think part of it is going to be found per staff's recommendation through maybe not keeping it at 80 cents, but notching it down to 77 makes sense from staff's recommendation. So I think all that makes sense. Now you may get additional revenue sources from other places that may tick up over time, but I think your core revenue source is the real estate tax rate. So I don't know if you had any specific questions. I think I'm just echoing what Lisa laid out.
Anybody have any questions?
I'm just wondering, a lot of the residents of Kelowna Beach are struggling right now too, especially with this inflation going on and not a lot of them are getting raises. So I know that's not your fault, but what have we done our due diligence to find a way not to raise taxes on the residents? Have we gone through every budget line item? Have we considered not hiring extra employees when we don't have the money for it? Have those things been factored into this number?
I think that's a question best answered by staff. They're the one with their boots on the ground at the staff level, analyzing the individual line items.
I would say yes, just for, obviously, town staff will be presenting our budget on the 20th, but when we went through our budget process and we put out our budget guidance to staff, based on their needs, we had over $906,722 in requested enhancements. So what we will be presenting to you is about $207,000, which is only touching police, an economic development manager, and then a capital project person that would be solely funded by ARPA. So Lisa and I have already cut over 600,000 plus enhancements based on what staff had initially asked and requested. Some of what Dr. Mitchell mentioned in terms of staff recruitment and retention hits us as well. Our healthcare increased 8.5%, so not 10% like the schools, but that's been across the board with all localities. The county is actually higher than us, but on average, we've seen significant increases in healthcare, and absorbing that is really not something that we have a lot of control over, as well as obviously some of those national trends as it relates to gas, petroleum, construction materials. We've gone back and even cut our public works a little bit more because we've had to. Otherwise, we would be looking at increasing more. Some of it also depends on what you all as a body decide to do with that extra position that the school is requesting. So we're down at the bare bones based on what staff has actually recommended as their essential needs. I've listened over the last year as manager to constituents' concerns as well. I know I didn't knock on doors like many of you, but people email me, people talk to me. And over the last year, I've heard the needs for increased public safety, increased infrastructure, and economic development, which would ultimately reduce some of our tax burden. So my budget presentation will only be focused on those core services. So no, there's not any fluff per se in those numbers.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Is there any action required by council tonight?
No, we have a public.
We need to
hearing,
set
right?
that public hearing date.
We gotta set the date.
To set the public hearing and direct the rate to advertise for the tax rate to advertise.
So we need to direct staff to do that, to set the public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
So I would make that motion.
Set the public hearing.
For May 18th.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of setting public hearing on May 18th?
Aye.
That's good. You have any problem with setting the public hearing on May 18th? Okay, I just want to make sure.
And can we go ahead and just advertise it at what the rate is now, knowing that we can come down between now and then?
Yes, and that's probably the safest thing to do, only because in your discussions, in the course of your discussions regarding the budget and ultimately the tax rate, whatever you advertise, you can adopt something lower than that. But if you exceed what you advertised, you would have to re-advertise and start over.
Okay, so we advertise it at the current rate and then discuss the rate.
That's the smart thing to do, just because, like I said, you can come down, and it sounds like your staff recommendation is going to be something lower than your current rate, but that gives you that flexibility without having to re-advertise and start over and get out of your schedule.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Do you need a motion for that or just direction, consensus?
A motion is probably best practices. It's just nice to have, but it would not be legally insufficient if you did not have a motion. But I will recommend to you, just as best practice, to go ahead and have a motion.
You're all about the motions tonight, Dr.
Yes, ma'am, I want it done by the book.
All right, let's make a motion.
So I make the motion to advertise it at the current rate of 80 cents.
Okay. is there a
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on that point from the attorney that we can set the rate lower, but better be safe than sorry on that? Okay, all in favor of the advertising?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have objections?
Nay.
All right, moving forward with that. I wanted to go back. Is there any other discussion on the tax rate adjustment at this point? I think April is gonna have it is April. The next meeting, we'll have more information on the budget process. I skipped over in citizen input because we didn't have anybody sign up. Ms. Giles, will you address the citizen input that happened at the planning commission meeting regarding Mr. Vaughn's comments? Because they were referencing allegations of legal wrongdoing. And I meant to do that under citizen comment, but I was glided over it because nobody signed up. So I didn't mean to forget that portion of it. Mr. Allison reminded me, so. I'm just trying to delay town decals as far as I can, actually, that's it.
I'm sorry, I did not have that email up.
Oh,
So that I
Do
wouldn't,
you want me to come back to you?
yes, then I can find the email, and I won't
Okay.
forget, I won't leave out any portion of the.
Yeah, I apologize, I meant to do it earlier, I would have given you a heads up. Just got rolling here. All right, let's move to beach and parking enforcement with Chief Deaver. He's the one, we had the school already. Chief Deaver.
My presentation will not be as nice as Dr. Mitchell's. I'm gonna have to hire him to assist me in the future.
Next time we'll collaborate.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Madam Mayor, members of council, the presentation is regarding mostly the traffic enforcement initiative for the upcoming season. keeping in mind that this is
Do you have your mic
tentative.
turned on?
It is, can you not hear me?
There you go.
Okay.
It's better when it's lower. Thank you.
The presentation being presented is for the upcoming parking enforcement season primarily, and I will speak about the beach ambassador program briefly and what we're attempting to do in the upcoming season. Keep in mind that the presentation is tentative on information we currently have. We're still waiting for the parking study to be concluded later this month. So this presentation may change slightly once we get that information and get further direction from council. So the background is we have 2 designated parking areas with parking meters in town limits. We have the downtown boardwalk area and we have the Castlewood Park area with the boat ramp. So the primary responsibility of parking enforcement falls on the police department, and it is a priority of the entire police department to participate in parking enforcement. With our current staffing resources, it will be addressed by police officers working daytime hours when most people will be in those areas, the beach and or the Castlewood Park area, seeing that parks are per town ordinance closed from dusk till dawn unless noted otherwise. The town stickers are another, decals are another point that may be changing tonight, as early as tonight, and a couple more presentations. But this is the information that was out at the time when the presentation was developed regarding how we will be enforcing parking enforcement with town decals as well as with paid meter parking in these areas. So as I previously mentioned, we will be utilizing full-time officers and part-time police officers for this enforcement. In my budget request that I've worked with the town manager and the CFO on, there is a part-time parking enforcement individual that their primary responsibility will be parking enforcement, primarily in the downtown area, but at Castlewood as well. The recommendation is for parking enforcement to be an objective of the entire department, with the exception of a part-time parking enforcement individual being hired in the new fiscal year if council approves that position in my budget request. As far as the Beach Ambassador Program, I've had multiple conversations with Bobby Duke regarding prior years' Beach Ambassador Program, as well as Councilman Moncure and his enthusiasm in walking the boardwalk in July and August. God bless him. The police department is moving forward with establishing a Police Explorer program, which is ran through the Scouts of America organization, and it is. We have our first meeting with the Scouts of America organization next Wednesday, and we will get all the legal documents and liability waivers on that date to move forward with an anticipated meeting of interest for youth in across the whole Northern Neck. This is not just Colonial Beach. We are venturing out to King George, Westmoreland, and the Community College in Warsaw as well, because the program goes up to age 20. So the goal would be to obtain several, we're hoping to get 10 to 12 individuals to participate in this program, but to pair one of those individuals with the parking enforcement employee or with a full-time officer, and use that as our Beach Ambassador program with the augmentation of volunteers like Mr. Councilman Moncure and any others from city, from town staff, or any other jurisdictions that would like to help, or any NGOs that would like to help with the ambassador program.
I had a woman from Renaissance Condos come up to me and say she wants to be a beach ambassador.
Okay.
So I told her to contact you.
I've not heard from her yet, but I look forward to having that conversation with her, and I welcome any support that we can get from the community for the ambassador program. Is there any questions from council regarding parking enforcement or the beach ambassador? Councilman Williams?
Yes, Ms. Williams.
Yes, I was just curious, because I've heard certain areas of the town aren't legally able to be enforced parking wise. So I wanted to clarify, is there a legal requirement to have like a sign a certain distance from a parking space that is paid parking enforced? Or, because right now, a lot of the complaints, and I think probably this will be addressed, with our parking study. But a lot of complaints, and people don't really understand what the rules are. And living here, if I'm driving around, I don't see a lot of signs. So is there any kind of requirement for that?
There is no state statute requiring that I'm aware of, and I have not fully made it through the town ordinances. However, I'm diving into town ordinances daily, reviewing various aspects of enforcement activity for the police department. Speaking with the town manager, the parking consultant, and Public Works, we've identified a few areas that we would like to modify, but we're waiting to make those modifications until we get the full report back, so we do everything at one time.
Thank you. I got one more question about decals, but I guess we're gonna talk about them, so.
We're gonna talk about decals.
But I guess it's kind of, I'm wondering, do you have to see that, or, because I know we have a new scanning system. I don't know if that's appropriate for the decal question.
I think that's a decal discussion question, so I'll just hold you off on that because I think it will need to come up during that. Yes, Dr. Sullivan?
This is April, and we had said that it was kind of a consensus that we wouldn't enforce parking in the off-season. So you all are enforcing parking again at the metered sites, right?
We have not begun enforcement activity as of today's date. However, officers are being retrained for the new officers that have been employed since last season on these systems, as well as myself. And as soon as we get the final revision from the parking and study, then we will move forward with enforcement actions based on the recommendations of town manager, council, and parking study.
And whose responsibility is it to check and make sure the kiosks are working and that the QR code is working, so that we've had a lot of frustration in the past related to that. And just with the season coming up, I think they all need a dry run.
That's Public Works. And as far as I know, they've been checked once already, but we're going to need further checking before the season starts. If you know of if you've had any complaints, by all means, they should be going to Public Works. We identified quite a few incidents of operator error last year. So hopefully we can alleviate some of them. These new machines are much clearer than the old ones, and I've utilized them. Oh, I'm sorry. New machines are much clearer than the old ones, and I've utilized them myself. I believe that I noticed a decrease in operator error with the new machines. By all means, if people know of anyone that is failing, they should contact Public Works. And PD always calls us if they know that there's a failure.
So last year, at the visitor center, that was always kind of a point of contact on the weekends when everything is the busiest, and people would very often come in and say, they can't get the machine to work, what do they do? And when we had a volunteer there, then they would often go out and help them, and if they couldn't make it work, they just call the PD and they would send somebody over to do it. Is that going to be, we're not going to have the visitor center this year because we're going to closing on that property with Dotson in June. So just thinking about having, I don't know, maybe beach ambassadors can be trained in that, but to have somebody down there on the weekends to deal with that.
Do all of the officers know how to use the kiosk?
I know that ongoing training is being completed for that. We have 2 officers that just graduated the academy in the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure if they've received the training, but all the officers prior to them were sent all the training on how to use the kiosk. We have worked with Public Works in the last 2 weeks regarding the kiosks and their operations, as well as moving forward with any recommendations from the study on relocation of any meters or any modifications needed based on the study guidelines.
Are we still offering the annual pass to people that don't live here? The one that's anybody could get?
Currently, that's still programmed in the system, yes.
I was just wondering because I know that mostly it was just user error, but under one circumstance, somebody paid and they bought the year pass instead of paying for a particular space. So, I think we had talked about maybe making that, not available at the kiosk, so that people weren't confused by it.
So do we want that deprogrammed off? Is that the direction?
I don't know, I mean, this is a parking discussion, I'm bringing it up.
Right now, it's still programmed on there. So if we
I
want to
thought-
take that off, we would have to
Yeah, we
take that off.
I thought we agreed to leave it on the app, though.
Yeah,
I think right now we're talking about the kiosks, because we did have some people who made that mistake, and they were issued refunds through their credit card company.
yeah, it was really
There is,
frustrating for them though when it did happen.
there is a, for lack of a better term, a separate message that says, are you sure you want to purchase a seasonal pass? So there are two fail-safe options. So for the people who still made a mistake even on the fail-safe option, then there is a message there.
Was
So,
was the second message in place when those
yes,
things, they still pressed yes?
yes.
Sometimes these things are gonna happen, I guess. I don't know that it's necessary on the kiosk as much as it would be on the mobile app, or they could come in and we could help them with it at town hall. But also I know that working with Flowbird to update the programming is an added complication to the season. So maybe we should wait for that parking study to get back before we make any changes to that.
I think the problem with a lot of the people that come down here every Saturday and Sunday and bring their family, and it makes sense to them to buy the pass, they can't come to town hall during the week. So having an option to buy it on the app, I think is good.
What about on the kiosk?
My experience with the kiosk is that when the sun's shining, it's difficult to read, and I've had a couple of times where I couldn't get it to work. The screen would go black, and it wouldn't have Tom shaking his head. He's been there too.
I've seen it. But I saw the old machines were worse.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
no argument there.
Yeah.
It's not standard.
Oh, no, I know, it's not the standard, Tom. We're up in the standard.
Better than awful is not the standard.
Well, and I'm gonna throw this out there, although I think it probably will wait for the parking study to come back, but I have heard some suggestion on making that annual pass for people that live out of town. I think it's $300 now, reducing that to like $150, and that it would be more palpable for people out of town. I'm not sure how many sold last year, but I just want to throw that out there as a talking point, that it's something we might want to look out when we talk about that parking study when it returns. And I mainly say that too, because where we are, you're asking for more people. We just had our lovely school board ask for more. The state's mandating more. Inflation is up. I mean, these are all real things. And so parking is one of the ways that we supplement that. It's a significant revenue source. The town makes more off of parking than it does off of all business licenses combined, almost twice as much. So it's very key revenue point, and it's part of why, the lots that we have been, kept as long as they have, and or enhanced or may need more enhancement. So we're gonna need to continue to diversify revenue options off of just real estate tax. That's important. So. Okay, any other parking? Wasn't it, yes, Mr. Allison?
If the thought process is to lower that to 150, we definitely need to make sure that our property owners decrease theirs from 100 as well. I mean, if we're gonna take 150 off for people that doesn't live here, that don't own property in town, we need to make sure that the people in town pay a discounted rate as well.
I think it's a key point. I also think we might get more decals sold. I think in the past years, we weren't really selling that many of the even $100 decals. And then once we started metering Washington Avenue, that went up, which was a good thing. And then But I think that's a very valid point. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Vivian, can I go back to you for just a second? I'm sorry to skip back to that, and it's my fault. It's just, I should have done it at citizen input because that was the appropriate time to address it.
It's okay. That's fine. I do have the email that was provided at the meeting. So there are, I believe, 3 basic points that were raised. The first one related to the notice of the meeting. And I will say that there are 2 notice requirements. One is under FOIA, the general meeting notice requirement of 3 days. The concern that was raised was that it says only 6 days notice was provided, and that is not sufficient to prepare or to be able to schedule to attend a meeting. So, but in addition to the FOIA statutory 3-day notice requirement, there is a separate zoning statute, public hearing requirement under 15.2 2204, and that is 2 publications for 2 successive weeks in a newspaper of general circulation in the locality. The publications must be separated by at least 7 days, and the second publication may not be less than 5 days prior to the date of the public hearing. Everything I've seen is that both requirements were met, the zoning notice requirement as well as the FOIA statutory notice requirement. So with respect to the specifically, not the meeting overall, but specific to the zoning, the zoning application that was presented at the meeting, the conditional use permit, that was at least a 2-week notice. And again, the salient point, I believe, is that the statutory requirements were met based on the information that I have seen. The second concern that was raised was about, it relates to, and this is very technical, but it relates to the statutory requirement in the Code of Virginia that when localities are disposing of real property, a public hearing is required, and that is absolutely true. Your public hearing was held in October 21st to be exact, of 2020. And on that date, 2 resolutions were adopted. One was a resolution to authorize the disposition of the property. A second resolution was adopted to approve the contracts that were presented. And I make that distinction because the code, while the code requires a public hearing for the disposition of real property and actually elevated requirements in some contexts, but not in this one. But the point being, there are many requirements in addition to this that sometimes come into play. They did not in this particular transaction. But with respect to the disposal, the disposition, in this case, a sale, it could be a lease as well, but in this case, a sale of real property, that was properly approved after a public hearing, and the resolution was adopted. Subsequent to that, when a contract is entered into, or as happened in this case, and as was pointed out, the contract following initial approval was amended. Those amendments in contract terms do not require public hearing, only the authority to dispose of the real estate. So the town council has the authority then to enter into contracts relating to that or to amend its contracts and that portion of the transaction does not require public hearings. A mention was made of closed meetings, and those were appropriately held for consultation with legal counsel. That is at any point in time an authorized action that the board may take to consult with legal counsel. What does not happen in closed meeting is that no actions are ever taken in closed meeting. And that was the case with this town council. No actions were taken in closed meetings. So that to the extent that was suggested, that did not happen. All of your contract amendments, and there were not a lot, there've been a couple along the way, but any contract amendments were adopted in open meeting as required under the law. And the last concern that was raised, I'll use the word concern, was about the town having a direct financial interest in the real estate, in the special exception, or I'm sorry, the conditional use permit that was presented and voted on. That is, the town is subject to its own zoning, but the town council overall always has its primary interest is in the health, safety, and general welfare of its citizens, of its residents. That is the controlling consideration. Zoning determinations are a legislative act, so this council acted like all other local governments in the Commonwealth of Virginia, well within its authority to issue a conditional use permit regardless of the ownership of the real property. And I would just, for purposes of analogy or pointing out an analogous situation, town council and the members of town council may have financial interests in many things that come before it, not the least of which are tax rates that were discussed even earlier tonight. So that's not unusual for there to be a financial interest in matters that come before town council. But the overarching consideration at all times being the health, safety, and general welfare of the residents. And I believe that was those were considered in every discussion I saw.
The only other thing I think you had, maybe you already addressed it, was I think there was some cut up verbiage about the fact that when the contracts were amended, the former contracts were voided in order for the new contract to be clear. And I know that we have been over this about the clarity of making sure we knew exactly what was the current contract and to not confuse or get in an issue where a prior contract then came back up and was used inappropriately. And that was for clarity, but I just wanted for you to address that.
Yes, and that was a contemporaneous act so that it was clear that one contract was replacing another, which is the functional equivalent of a contract amendment. And to my earlier point, amendments of contracts and the negotiation of various terms or the negotiation of new terms is within the scope of authority of a local governing body. And once the sale was approved, it was within your authority to then amend the terms, should you deem that to be in the general interest, health, safety, and welfare of your citizens.
Thank you. At your request, Tom. Okay. Oh, the thing of the night. Man, I put it off as long as I could. You guys put it at the bottom of the agenda on purpose. It's town decal time. Yay! Yeah, I knew somebody was excited about that.
Can you guys all hear me? Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you already have said, we're going to be talking about decals, so we'll just go ahead and hop right into it.
I like your enthusiasm.
There we go. The town currently issues 2 decals. The first decal is issued to residents with vehicles registered in and in the jurisdiction of the town of Colonial Beach. This decal costs $30 and has historically been placed on the front windshield. The other decal the town issues is for property owners with vehicles registered in another locality and not garaged in the town of Colonial Beach. Historically, these have cost $100 and been placed on the rear windshield. For further background, the Colonial Beach Police Department has historically requested that all decals be moved to the rear windshield in order to better aid enforcement. In the last few months, town staff, including the police department, the finance department, and the town manager's office, met, discussed decal placement, and made a joint decision to move all decals to the rear windshield in order to better aid parking enforcement. This change was advertised on the town's Facebook page as well as the town's website. And in addition, town staff have been advising everyone that has purchased a decal of the new location. Next slide, please. This is the town code describing the display of the decal. I would call attention to the last sentence where manner prescribed by the town treasurer. The town does not have a town treasurer position for all intents and purposes. The function of the town treasurer has been absorbed into the finance department. Next slide, please. So at the request of town council, this item has been brought to your attention to discuss at a public meeting. Your alternatives, no, go ahead. The alternatives, council can amend or strike the language of the applicable town ordinances. Obviously, there will be fiscal impact or financial impact depending on the decisions of the council. We recommend a future elimination of the decal altogether to be included on personal property tax bills in accordance with county standards. In 2019, Arlington, the city of Arlington went away with their decal. They had a decal system, they abolished that. And at the time, they were one of 19 municipalities of the the Commonwealth of Virginia, out of 371, something like that. And that was in 2019, so obviously that number has decreased with Arlington going down. So we're one of very few localities that still have a decal system. Most localities have moved to personal property tax system. All right, any questions? Mr. Williams?
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, if the decal is no longer on the car, how do you enforce the parking? Is it only by the scan of the plate?
That is correct. The town finance department sends the information to the vendor that assists with the software, the parking enforcement tools, and it will show if it's been paid or not when we scan the license plate.
Okay. So I guess golf carts would there be anything different with golf carts?
There could still be a town ordinance requiring a decal for golf carts. Most of the other jurisdictions that have golf carts do require a separate decal for those to show enforcement because there is no license plate to scan.
Okay. And final question, for this year, are we recommending just let people put them on the front or the back? Or what, are we looking for any direction there from council?
I think that's what you all are going to discuss and give direction to us tonight.
Thank you.
It's open for discussion. You're looking at me, so I'm looking at you.
Well, you're looking at me. I don't know. Obviously, there has been an administrative decision to put them on the back of the vehicle. I don't know that's necessarily inappropriate. Obviously, we've got the ordinance provision that indicates the contrary. I am in the process of reviewing ordinances. I'll put this on the list. Let me suggest to you all, I will have a report to you by the end of the month. It is the beginning of a process, not the end of it. So there is much work to be done. I'm taking the easy part and going through getting rid of obsolete stuff. But hopefully it will initiate a process because there's an awful lot in the ordinances that does need to be reviewed, and I'm identifying those. And this is one of them.
Mr. Allison?
So I'll add some citizen input that I've received, a lot of citizen input that I have received. Several things. One was brought up about Jeeps. One was brought up about convertibles. So those have been indicated that they would be on the front windshield due to the fact that the Jeep top would come off or whatever. I understand that. The other comments I've received was a lot of people have tinted windows, and by sticking the thing on the back window, it may cause them to have to replace the rear. The stickiness will pull the actual tint off and cause issues, and they spend hundreds of dollars and sometimes thousands of dollars if you account for all the vehicles they own, me included. So that's another concern. And if we are doing front for some, back for some, why not just keep it the way it was and have everything on the front like it's always been? And at which point we go to a stickerless, then we would just get rid of them altogether. Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna stick it on this end. I'm seeing. Okay.
Most of my points.
Ms. Robertson?
A lot of what Councilman Allison said, is, I would agree with him. My car in particular, and it's 10 or 11 years old, it's darkened in the back, and I have heat stripes in the back. So that's not gonna be advantageous for that sticker, I'm assuming. I don't know, but I mean, that was like a question mark at the end of it. And I know I'm not the only one.
So if a vehicle back windows are factory darkened, that is what is called smoked and not
Right.
tinted. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
in the glass. As far as the heat strips for the defrost is no different from the adhesive for your state inspection sticker with the defrost on the windshield.
Okay.
So there should be
I don't have it.
very minimal, if any, effects of the sticker being on the rear window for the defrost strips versus the defrost of the windshield. If you aftermarket tint your windows where they put a film over the glass, then that could potentially be an issue.
Ms. Glenn? Well, if we're gonna change our mind right now and go back to putting the decals in the front, the issue is that quite a few people already bought the decals, and to put them on where you were told to put them on. So then what do we do then?
The town will reissue decals to those people that have already purchased.
Right, and that costs us, maybe not a lot, but still, it's an inconvenience for the residents also.
Okay, good point.
So, I went into town hall to buy my sticker, and I ran into a resident in the hall that was just very, very upset. And I had the discussion with her, and she was talking about the tinted windows, she was talking about the defrost lines. And we had a discussion, and she's like, just why are they doing it? And I said, well, one of the purposes for doing it is that it would require less police hours for them to enforce parking. Because it would be so easy to see if there wasn't a decal on the back window because most people pull in. And she was like, okay, maybe I'll just do it. So then I went out and I put my decal on my back window. Well, as it turns out, I have a 2019 van. I can't put it in the lower left-hand corner because that's totally blacked out and underneath the metal part of the body. It looks like it's a window on the outside, but it's not a window on the inside until you get, 6 or 8 inches into the window. But I put it there, and it was difficult to read. I'm not sure it could be read and assured that it was the right color from a police car, but maybe it could. But then I was thinking about that, the heat, the defrost lines. So I said, okay, I'm gonna just take it off before it gets stuck real tight. You know how it's easier to take off? I had to use a scraper, and I actually did have to take some of that covering off my defrost lines in order to get the sticker off of the inside of my back window.
Well, our stickers are serious. They're like super glue.
So it does damage the defrost lines on the back, which are very different from the defrost process on the front of the windshield. And so I went and got a replacement sticker and paid my $1, but I haven't put it anywhere yet. And the citizens that have asked me, I said, we're gonna discuss it. It's not due until the end of the month. If you wanna just wait, until there's a decision made. But we still pay for the decal. That will just be transferred into the personal property tax payment. You won't have to go to town hall if we do away with the sticker. But for this year, the other point is that when you peel the back off the sticker, it says specifically exactly where to put it. It says put it right next to your inspection sticker on your front windshield.
On the sticker itself.
On the sticker itself, when you peel that backing off.
I bought mine, I haven't put it on yet.
Yeah, so I'm saying, okay, so we've got an ordinance that says put it there.
Yeah.
And then we've got a sticker that says put it there. And then we've got a poster in town hall that says put it somewhere else. Who do our citizens rely on for what's the right thing to do? Maybe I misunderstood. The sticker says put it right there. I think we should, if you've already put it on, leave it on the back. Make sure it's not gonna damage when you take it off. If you don't put it on the front, let's make it consistent, or let's just go ahead and do away with it this year and start using the license plates.
Okay, yes, Mr. Williams.
I agree with what Karen was saying. My opinion is just, if they've already got it there, leave it there, or they can put it on the front. Since it sounds like they're probably leaning towards getting rid of them next year anyway. Like Karen said, I've been holding mine, waiting for an actual decision,
Me too.
like a lot of people, but I would recommend people probably put it in front so they don't damage like she said she did. But let them keep it on the back or put it on the back if they really want to.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, you were just shaking it.
let's acknowledge that the rollout on this has been less than perfect. So we have to deal with that, but a very serious question to staff. Would it be possible to get rid of decals by next year?
I believe so. We would have to look at a separate system possibly, or go back to our vendor who has handed out the handhelds to see if whether or not that's possible.
Is anybody considered exterior stickers?
So yeah, it seems to me like if this change was going to be made, that the sticker would have become an exterior sticker in order to be put on the back and not a windshield sticker. Because, so the stickers were ordered probably back in November or something, and I know you guys order them way ahead of time, and then the decision was made by staff, and when you didn't realize there was a code ordinance that got in that prescriptive about it, which I'm not sure the code should be that prescriptive about it, because to be honest with you, I think that that's where you get into all this verbiage that we have in our town code that Tom wants to clean up in the first place that's not followed because it's overly prescriptive. And I know Tom's a fan of reduced government, so we're trying to get rid of some of the antiquated and unnecessary verbiage there. I mean, this would have been one of the things that then you wouldn't have had that complication on top of it. But one of the things that the public process of, local government does do is that it allows that public input in order to change the town code. And in that, I would have heard then some of these concerns before the change would have been made. And I would not be getting 1 or 2 emails a day about town decals for the last 30 days. I have a lot of citizen comment about this. I have more citizen comment about town decal location than I do about any budget item, any expenditure item, Eleanor Park, you name it. I have more emails about the location of the decal than I do about any of those other issues. So.
It directly affects everybody.
It directly, and that's it. This is something that directly affects their annual routine, right? And so it's like, it's bigger than, I think there's, like Tom mentioned, there's some valid points as to why this sticker would be more helpful to the staff on the back. Doesn't seem like it's working out that way in practice though. So I don't think people can put it on the front or the back. It's already on the back, leave it on the back. I mean, that's where I'm personally stand on it. I was just explaining my reasoning and rationale from all of the things that I've heard. Same things that Kenny's talked about, same things that Vicky's talked about, same things that David and Karen have talked about, everybody. So at this point, it looks like our officers are gonna need to get out of the car and they're gonna need to walk around both the front and the back of the vehicle. So you're gonna be very, very visible this year and very aware and very involved. And everybody will see officers all around their cars looking for a sticker, possibly.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
One other point about going to having the decal fee in the property tax bill, personal property tax bill. There have been complaints by citizens all over this town that tell me, my neighbor never buys a sticker. Now, I don't know how that's monitored at the town level, but if it went in the personal property bill, we would be collecting that fee from everybody that has a car registered in town, which I don't think we're doing now.
Oh, I'm sure that that's not happening now. And that was one of the first complaints that I heard from a citizen that basically the day I got elected was, my neighbor doesn't buy a sticker and I buy stickers, and it's not fair. It's not fair. And one resident today, he's right. It's not fair. They should have to buy a sticker too. But enforcement of that is complicated for many reasons. So, it sounds like this whole snafu, if the end of it is we move into the 21st century with no stickers, then you didn't intend that, did you?
No.
I don't think so. Yes, Mr.
I was just
Williams.
gonna, once it, town I moved from, before I lived here, is they had this sticker. For years, you had to go get it, and then they put it in the tax bill. The only thing that's unique about this town, probably compared to a lot of towns, is the benefit you get from that sticker. And I guess if we can move the technology phase and be able to do that, that would be good, I guess. But it is something more unique about it.
Yeah, I mean, most people, you have to pay for the sticker, but you actually don't get any benefit. There's no free parking.
Exactly.
There is nothing but it. You still
There
have to
is-
pay for it.
There is another, in Surfside Beach, if you're a citizen and your car is registered in the town of Surfside Beach, you do not have to pay for
But
parking.
I'm saying it's not typical.
I don't know how typical it is, I just know the two places I've lived.
It's kind of an aside positive of the, no, I know Fredericksburg's not like that, so.
It does make it a little more palatable, actually paying for that sticker.
Yes, to have parking. Oh, I agree. I like it. I like that part of it. So we're gonna try to move to no stickers next year. Tom went to the restroom, but I feel like he has voiced that this just needs to be cleaned up. I'm gonna speak for him. Stickers front, back,
What?
you don't care. Where the stickers,
You don't care.
put them on the back, put them on the front, put them on either one.
Is it my choice?
Well, do we wanna,
I want to put mine on the back, what do I do?
I think he should just leave it there. That's what I think.
Leave it there. I'm gonna put mine on front. Cause
David?
I'm gonna-
Front, back either? I'm just getting consensus right now. Both?
Anywhere, Wild West.
Okay. Oh my goodness. I don't know about that.
I think we should do front or back due to the fact that we've already established a precedent from the town when they issued out the initial ones. It would be a preference of the individual citizen to put it either on the front where it normally goes or on the back left corner as instructed.
Always on the driver's side.
Correct.
I just don't, I don't want, I would like to see the instructions to put it on the back removed from the process. Because I think there are people that are gonna say, oh, I gotta put it on the back, and then they damage their car and somehow, or they can't see it. I don't think that's necessary, so just remove those from the instructions.
So you're saying just put it back on the front?
I'm saying, follow the instructions
you
in the,
have it
in
on
the
the
current,
back
in the current
already-
ordinance, or on the back of the sticker, it says, put it on the front, where it's always been. Don't instruct them to put it on the back, but if they've got it on the back, we're gonna accept it, we're not gonna make them move it.
All right, I wanna move on to this side, and then I can come back.
I'm sorry, we've bumbled this enough, let's leave bad enough alone, and wherever you put it is good.
Okay? Vicky? Okay.
Yeah, wherever you can, what's most visible for you in the front or the back?
I just have never had so many phone calls and
Oh, yeah,
on
people
my
stop you on the street.
school board
Try going,
meetings,
yeah.
on my, being on council, I've just never had so many emails and so many phone calls over one entity of something.
It directly affects everybody.
It does,
Yeah.
yes, you're right.
You put a warning sign up at the council saying, put it on the back at your own risk.
At your own risk. Okay, so I mean, I'm just trying to bring a consensus here on direction for staff. I think that's why we put it on the meeting, because we have gotten so much public comment about it, and, sounds like if you got it on the back, leave it on the back. If you put it on the front, put it on the front.
Remove the instructions from town hall and that tells people,
To put it on the back.
put it on the back.
Is there consensus on that? And feeling a lot of head shaking.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Sorry, Chief.
Anything further?
And move toward the no decal system for the following year. So we're gonna have to invest in some technology though, because right now our, the parking enforcement gun thing, whatever it is, you have to punch the plate in. It's not scanning it. So that's why the sticker's helpful, because then you don't have to waste the time punching the plate in, right? So we're gonna get rid of the sticker, we're gonna get the scan ones that automatically scan. New,
We've already started looking into the cost of that.
uh-huh,
The cost we're getting is today's cost, so that can be added to our budget proposal
Oh,
for this year if you wish.
right,
Otherwise, the cost could go up, but it is roughly 22 to 35,000, depending on features for a vehicle mounted drive-by scan the license plate system.
that may need to be a capital CIP item, because $30,000 cap for technology. So that could be funded, not in a general fund. I am trying to find ways to bring this budget down.
I understand. I'm just
To make that clear.
the tentative research regarding this matter in preparation for tonight's meeting is looking to a full turnkey system that we just drop into any vehicle, Mr. Allison's pickup truck or your van or a police vehicle, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
Any vehicle we drop it into, turnkey would probably be around 33 to 35,000. for
that sounds
today's
like a
budget.
reasonable investment, considering the cost of the stickers, the cost of the staff time, the loss in revenue that is done by the process being so complicated, and now the additional time that a police officer has to take in order to walk to both the front and the rear of the vehicle. Yeah? Okay. I know, I see you raising your hand, but I don't like to call people from the audience. Okay, you got some, go ahead.
I have a question. When you do a system like this, you need an overlap. So you probably have 1 year that's both the scanner and the sticker, if you want to not have a bunch more meetings like this. Plus, you're gonna need two stickers, scanners, because one's gonna be broken or is left in Joe's car or whatever. So you shouldn't figure that in too.
Man has a point, well, we can look into it.
Can we possibly look into the cost of just getting an exterior sticker as well, so we have something to compare as council?
Sure, I think for next year, if we're gonna need an overlap sticker year consideration, staff needs to analyze all those options. And maybe
I would vote for no single year change.
what is that? No,
Next year they come in and we're gonna tell them to do something different again?
I see. Right. Keep it on the front, same
Keep
sticker.
it where it is until we can till we can get rid of it.
Okay. I enjoyed hearing from so many people though, Karen. It was really the first time actually I've heard from some of those people ever, so that was nice. I'm just glad to know that they know they can get in contact with me. They know I respond.
They know you can interrupt you when you're eating dinner,
I'm
having a beer. Doesn't matter. Hey, can I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
So one clarifying question, for the $100 decal that has historically been on the back, if we have to go with stickers again, do we then want to have that sticker placed on the front as well so that it is uniform?
It's on the back of a golf cart, but I guess you know a golf cart's a golf cart, so you don't need to look at it as closely.
Well, the golf cart decal is an exterior decal, so that could be the one that's used for the $100 and go on the outside of the back of the window.
I think India's point is all cars would be in the same spot, and that's how this whole process got muddled up to begin with.
But if we're doing away with the sticker, you need a $100 sticker because their license plates isn't gonna scan, or is it? Is it gonna be in the system if they bought $100? It will be.
It would be in the
Okay.
electronic
Yeah.
system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Technology that would provide that, yes.
Okay.
That
All right.
would be at least what we shot for.
All right, I'd like an update on this whole no sticker process in 6 months. Does that sound like, that would give us 6 more months to, Nate? Yep, right.
Yep, will do, thank you.
Yeah, Nate, it's not your fault, you're good. Thank you for doing the presentation. Grants process.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. Even more exciting than town decal discussion is the discussion on bureaucratic processes.
Oh.
So let's get into it. Just to give you some background, the town has no official grant processes on file. I was hired in summer of 2021, and these procedures will establish processes related to town pursuit of grant funding, partnerships between the town and NGOs on grant-funded projects, compliance processes for new grants, and then a compliance process for recurring and non-competitive grants. Again, as I just mentioned, there were no processes written down on file, but there were management practices that seemed to be in place. They were decentralized procedures in both pursuing grant opportunities and then in the implementation in terms of who was responsible for what duties. It wasn't very clear. And in post-award compliance and grant administration, there were many deadlines missed due to ineffective tracking. And while all of that's important is because that damages relationships with granting agencies. When an agency gives you money and then you're managing it poorly, they don't want to give you money again. You want to develop that relationship, make contacts with everyone you talk to, and make it a strong funding source that you can tap into in the future. So the purpose is to establish these policies governing both the pursuit of grants and post-award compliance. And the benefits of having these processes in place, there will be increased staff capacity for grant pursuit and compliance. It will be a more efficient process, improved collaboration with NGOs, increased accountability on town staff and all parties involved in grant administration. And most importantly, it will enable staff to reference these policies in the future. It won't make sense to have a grant writer forever. Right now it does, because there's record amounts of federal and state dollars coming down, but that's not always going to be the case. So you're going to want other staff members by department to be able to manage grants in the future. And so these processes will be able to be referenced by those employees. So hopefully this can improve operations for a long time. I'm not going to bore you with all of the policies because there are 4 different ones and they all have 15-ish steps. So I'm here to tell you about the town council involvement in those policies. And they'll come in 2 main ways. First, in the pre-approval of grants, which will come in the form of a resolution of support. And for grants with a match under $30,000, this will also serve as contract authorization. And then the second part would be authorizing the town manager to actually enter the grant agreement. That'll also be through a resolution. And now this is only for grants with a local match over $30,000. So the basic idea is for smaller grants, you'll see them once. For bigger grants, you'll see them twice. And that $30,000 number was selected because just to be consistent with town policies, it was my understanding that $30,000 is typically where council has to get involved. That's why that number was selected. So I also wanted to give a little highlight on the NGO collaboration process, both for you all and the public. So how it basically begins is the NGO will submit a proposal to the town manager, which will include at a minimum benefits of the project to the town, costs, and then a draft MOU of what duties the town will execute and what duties the NGO will execute. And from my understanding and looking at past events and events I've been involved in, that MOU coming at the very beginning of the process and having the duties very well outlined will make it better for everyone, both the NGOs and the town, just to be on the same page moving forward. And then if the town manager supports that proposal from the NGO, I would be directed to present to council requesting a resolution of support, which would include everything I normally present to you on, as well as the MOU. So you can get an idea of how much work the organizations are doing and how much work the town staff is doing. And for these grants, you will also see these twice always, no matter what the match is, because we're working with a non-governmental organization. So just to be dot our I's and cross our T's, we thought it would be best practice to bring it. And that's basically the highlights. If you would like to see the lengthy and boring administrative processes, please let me know. But other than that, if you have any questions, I'm here.
Any questions? No? John?
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna do the motion for closed meeting. Is there a motion to go into closed meeting as stated on the agenda? Do I have to read it off? As stated on the agenda, I love this. Getting more efficient every day. Look at government.
For all three?
For all three, unless there's some reason to take them apart, I think so. Yeah, for all three. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, 5-minute bathroom break, and we'll go into closed session.
Yeah, sure.
Oh.
certified.
ISO certified.
Tom's not here, Tom, where? Where'd Tom go?
I'm sure.
All right, hold on. I gotta do it again. I didn't realize Tom was in here. I have to pee also, which is now a public record, and I
It's me too, but it doesn't have to be in there, nor do you have to say it.
I know, I was trying to be able to go to the bathroom.
The difference between you and we went at 5:45, 6 o'clock, and 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I know.
Girl, mama.
It's a long day.
Yep, it is.
Long day. And my staff loves it when I'm been this late at a meeting and I come in the next morning, they love it. All right, is there a motion to reconvene an open meeting?
So moved.
I'm just gonna redo the whole thing. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to certify that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting were convened, were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by council?
So moved.
Second, and individually certified.
ISO certified.
ISO certified.
ISO certified.
ISO certified.
ISO certified.
ISO certified.
Okay, Tom, would you like to make a motion?
I move that we tender an offer to Vivian to serve as town attorney. Is that sufficient?
Offer of employment, I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, is there a motion to,
Is there a discussion?
oh, I'm sorry, David, I've just assumed since we had discussion at both meetings. Would you like to do public discussion?
I just have a question. This is just for town attorney, correct? Because we have discussed zoning, and so I want to just clarify.
I think it's employment offer, and the only employment offer that gets council we can make is for attorney. If there is an employment offer for any other position, that comes from the town manager.
Okay.
Just to clarify, I think assignment of duties.
Okay, yeah, no, the contract specifies all the duties as assigned.
That's, clarify that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's a good question. All right. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, I heard everybody's
A
good.
motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Aye. And we are adjourned. Meeting adjourned.
Stay here while we do that. Otherwise, I'm gonna forget.
Okay, have a good night.